Well, here's another video for you guys. A little bit of stuff I had actually seen these on there's a couple of different vehicles that kind of surprised me. And then there's some other little stories I got. You know, I used to see these work orders. This one particular work order I put up here now came from a service writer I used to work with named Curtis, and he brought me this. Handed me this work order. They had the dispatch system set up so that each service writer had his own group of mechanics. You know, and each one had a drivability guy, and each one had a line mechanic, and so on and so forth. You know, fast service and all that. Well, he hands me this thing, and it says, you have to turn on the left turn signal before the vehicle will start. And I'm thinking, that's the strangest problem I've ever heard of. And it was on their first repair line, and so I bent over backwards trying to find that doggone problem. And then what happened was the guy, he had written it up on a repair line so I would know how to start the vehicle. Well, I dug in there, and about 30 minutes it took me to find out that the people had altered the wiring that way as an anti-theft device. You know, they felt like even if somebody had their key, they wouldn't be able to figure out that you had to turn on the left turn signal to start the vehicle. I was thinking, why didn't he put it on a sticky note and put it on the thing instead of putting it on a repair line? It was the dumbest thing. He was a short-sighted guy. This same guy came one day when I was in the parts room, and there was a brand new Crown Victoria that I was working on. It was sitting out there in the, and you know, these service advisors, they all want to be the customer's superhero, and they want to be the one that has a chance to tell them, yeah, we took care of this, it won't cost you anything, and even though you may have caused your own problem. And so he came and he says, can I take 3 15-amp fuses out of this car you're working on out here? And I was just kind of shocked by that, and I said, oh, I guess, I don't know what else to tell you, you know. And so he pulled 3 15-amp fuses, and I watched which ones he took. And I went back in the parts room, because that's where I was when he approached me for that. And I says, make a ticket and charge Curtis with 3 15-amp fuses, you know, which they could do that on his employee number. It was kind of funny because they handed him a bill for those 3 fuses, you know. But this guy was a piece of work. I'm not kidding. One time I got this, you know, I don't know how many times any of you guys have run into this, but occasionally you'll wind up with the key to a vehicle. And if you work on a lot of vehicles, you may have run into this before. I walked out there, I drew a ticket on a Ford Tempo, and I walked it was doing something stalling or whatever. And I went out there and I got in it, and I opened it up, got in it, cranked it up, backed up, it stalled, and I discovered that it needed an engine controller. It didn't take me very long to troubleshoot it, but one way or another, I put an engine controller on it, fixed the car. And then I recognized that I hadn't looked at the key tag, and I had fixed the wrong car. The key to the Tempo they gave me fit this other car that I also had to work on. So both, you know, the same key fit both cars. Occasionally I have one where the one key will fit one's key will fit car number 2, but it won't go the other way. But anyway, so I went to Curtis, and I had already told him it was going to be $300, you know, and all that for the repair. Then I went back and told him, I said, look, I fixed the wrong car, and this other one needs a throttle position sensor, and it's only about $60. And Curtis says, well, since we jerked the guy around, can we tell him we'll do this one for free? I said, no, we're not doing this one for free. He's already okayed $300. He'll be happy as a pig in slop if he only has to pay $60. And this was the kind of stuff I went through with these knotheads all the time out there, you know. These service writers were just, you know, really annoying sometimes how they would do that. One of them borrowed a ratchet of mine when I wasn't looking, and went out there to do an easy recall under the hood where you're replacing one of the bolts for a jumper cable, you know, recall program. Anyway, he kept that ratchet up there with paper thrown on top of it for 3 weeks until I bought another one. And then when he brought it back, I said, I bought a $54 ratchet to replace that because I didn't know what happened to it. You know, he shrugged his shoulders and walked off. Alright, so this Mazda 6 says something happened and the timing belt came off. Well, that didn't make any sense because this one doesn't have a timing belt. You know, you might have run into a situation like that where somebody just gives you, this was a customer telling me this, and the vehicle had been sitting in their yard under a tree for probably 6 months, because when this happened, they just didn't drive it anymore. Well, what was really wrong with it was that this particular little bolt that goes through that idler for the belt had popped off, and the idler came off, and the belt, this rendered the car undrivable. And when somebody looked at that, they didn't want to fool with it, because that bolt was broke off way up in there. It was a sort of a pain. All right, and so this is what it looked like straight on. If you look the way they got that thing fixed, this is probably that thick, and it has to go through there, and it's got a slot. And basically, as it moves around, because it's not going through a hole to support it on all sides, it popped it off. But it also makes the bolt somewhat easy to remove. And what we managed to do was we got it out of there with an easy out. All right, so, I backed up. Got her done. Game, set, and match. We easy outed that one out of there, drilled a hole in it, and easy it out. That reminds me of a Trailblazer one time that one of my students was using a 3/8 air ratchet to put the water pump back on the darn thing, and he popped off one of them 6mm bolts. And so we took the radiator and all that stuff out of there so he could sit in front of the vehicle, and I said, you're going to have to drill straight up into that bolt, and we're going to get an easy out and take it out. And so he got this, it's not really good to use an air drill on that because you spin it too fast usually. So give him an electric drill, and it didn't go into it like hot butter, and so he just said, well, we need a better drill bit. And then this other student tried it, and he says, you need a better drill bit. And so they laid the drill down, and both of them had to go to work because they were working afternoon jobs and co-op stuff. But anyway, I sat down there and I, put the drill bit in there, and we put some pressure on it real steady, and I pulled the trigger, and that drill, it cut into that bolt really slow. But I got a deep enough hole in it where I could take an easy out in it, screw it right back out of there. And then I texted them a picture of what I had done, and they accused me of using a different drill bit. But I didn't. They just weren't patient enough, and they were wanting to just go into it like hot butter, and it won't always do that. Anyway, 2008 Ford Fusion showed up on a trailer with the same doggone problem. Had the same problem, had the same engine, been sitting under a tree in the yard for several months. The same kind of deal. All right, I don't know if they talked to the other person or whatever. So we busted out the 2-inch hole saw on this one because the bulkhead, when you take a fender splash shield off, you got metal. You got 2 layers of steel in between you and that bolt hole. Well, I need to get straight into that bolt hole because there wasn't hardly no room between it and that bulkhead. So I broke out that hole saw and I bored me a hole in there. And it wasn't perfectly in the middle, but it didn't matter. And furthermore, it wasn't going to hurt a dadgum thing because we're going to put the fender splash shield right back over it. You never even know it's there. And so we went in there, we punched that one. We got a long punch and punched it. We got a drill bit, we drilled it out, and we put it back in there. Now the problem I got with that is the bolt they were using was an 8.8, which is not very, of course, somebody might say, well, if you put a harder bolt in there, it's going to be more brittle and more prone to break. Well, I don't know about that, but I do know that 2 of these doggone things broke. Whenever you buy that idler, it comes with the bolt. And but anyway, I put that one back on there, got that one done too. But remember, like I was talking about the air drill, don't spin the drill too fast, because what happens is it heats up the drill bit, it heats up the bolt, and it actually makes the bolt harder, it tempers it, and it makes the drill bit softer because it takes the temper out of it. So you got basically a lose-lose situation there. If you ever run into that where somebody spun a drill bit too fast, thinking spinning it faster would drill it faster, you wind up with a situation like that. That's why I always handed them a variable speed electric drill and told them to put good strong pressure on it and not do it, too much. Makes a mess and the job's a lot harder. All right, so how many of these have you seen? These 2 we saw in 1 week. Now, it's the same engine, but it's in 2 different cars and all that. This Toyota van was one that belonged to some really good friends of mine. We went to Panama City on a beach trip. Heck, this was back in 1991 or 90 or something like that. And on the way back from the beach, they kept having to add water to their van because it had sprung a leak. And whenever I got under there and got to looking for when they finally have to stop every 10 miles and add water, we got back home finally, because it's about 90 miles from Panama City to here. And I went up there and looked at it, and, the next day was Sunday. And so I went and I told them, I says, let me, well, no, I looked at it when we got back on Saturday afternoon. And I says, I got to teach my Sunday school class in the morning, but what I'll do is come back after that and fix it. And so it had a Y that was made out of some crappy material, and I'll show you a TSB on that in a minute, that talked about this thing leaking right there where it put together. Well, I got a solder, and I got a torch, a bottle torch, and some acid core solder, and I managed to solder that thing where it wouldn't leak. And it held all the way back to Tuscaloosa. They didn't have it. Of course, they were telling me, is this going to hold? I don't know if it's going to hold or not. I said, I didn't charge you anything, so I'm not going to guarantee anything either. But they did. They made it all the way back up there, and they took it to the dealership, and they got it fixed. Well, I thought I had that TSB, but I don't. There was a TSB talking about replacing that little thing that failed. This right here was on a Nissan pickup truck, and that's a picture I took of it leaking. And I'm thinking, well, is it leaking because the clamp's loose and it's coming from around the hose, or what's the deal? All right, and it turned out there was a hole rusted in that little thing, and it had to pull a starter out of there to get to it. It had 5/8 hose. This 5/8 hose. This is 3/8 pipe, 90 degrees right here. And the parts house only had a fitting with 1/2-inch pipe thread, so we wound up having to order one from Nissan. And all right, hang on a minute. Let me see if my thing will go. All right, this is a 2004 Mercedes. Let me back up here. I think I messed up there. Nope. 2004 Mercedes right here. And these right here, they had collapsed motor mounts on it. That's the new motor mount, and that's the one that was collapsed. It was just shaking your teeth out when you put it in reverse. We replaced actually all 3 of the motor mounts and took care of that problem right there. That was a pretty big job, but the guy that I had doing it was really fast and really tough, and he got it done. Now this Game Warden's K2500 came in with a popping noise in the front end, 4-wheel drive hubs that wouldn't engage, rear brakes that like to skid. That's actually a picture of the brakes. The hubs were caused by a missing fuse. I think it was fuse 24, I don't remember what it was now, but replaced that fuse, got the hubs where they would engage. The popping noise, the frame was cracked where the steering box bolts to it. You might have seen that before on one of those trucks. Whenever the steering box is always putting stress on that frame. And he said that he had a friend that had a welding shop that had fixed some of those before, and he was going to weld it back together for him so it wouldn't pop when he did that. We had to beat the rear drums off of there though with a lot of PV blaster. We just banged on those things to get them off. Those drums weighed about 60 pounds, but we put him some new brake shoes and new wheel cylinders on it. But everybody got sufficiently hammered by the time those jobs were done. It was a sort of a, it was a good week. And this is a short video, but I appreciate you being patient with me. Not all my videos are going to fill up the full 30 minutes, but I enjoy telling these stories, and I will be in touch with you guys again. I'm going to go ahead and set this one up to go out Monday morning at 7 o'clock, and I'll talk to you guys later.